You can cling to your comfort and your calendar and your control, or you can take up your cross and step into your calling, but you cannot do both. It just doesn't work like that. There's no way to follow Jesus without self-denial. There's no way to be his disciple without taking up your cross. So I was home alone for most of last week. My family was hanging out with my in-laws, and mostly I worked a lot extra because I had time. And moving into a building in the fall is just a lot of details and a lot of different directions. But one night I was tired and I just finished a bunch of tasks and I was like, all right, I'm going to go home and watch a documentary because I'm the only nerd at my house who likes those and everyone else is gone. So I drove home, sat down, and the internet was out, which is just the worst. And honestly, I feel like part of the problem when that happens is that internet service providers are not usually very helpful. It's in the moments when the internet goes out that we're reminded that all the fine print in their contracts renders every promise they make basically useless. You guys know what I'm talking about. Like, you sign on, it's like speeds up to 100 megabytes a second and great customer service. And that doesn't mean that. Speeds up to 100 megabytes per second in the fine print means 12 megabytes per second, unless you're awake at 4 in the morning and no one in your entire neighborhood is using the internet. And great customer service means that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you can call someone who will ask, did you try unplugging it and plugging it back in? And when you say yes, they tell you, all right, I can get a technician out there in about a week and a half. But the good news is you will not be refunded for all those days you paid for internet you didn't get. Fine print is tricky, and not just with internet service providers. I think, at least if you guys are anything like me, sometimes it feels like the fine print of faith is a little tricky too. Like, we sign up for love and hope and forgiveness and joy and community, and then we sit in church and someone says, yeah, but following Jesus also, and then it triggers this thing in us, and maybe you haven't exactly asked it this way, but all of us have wondered, can I follow Jesus and still have the life I want? Like, that's real. And whether we phrase it like that or not, sometimes the idea that following Jesus isn't easy and doesn't look like the path that we wanted it to look like causes us to wonder whether it's worth it or whether maybe it costs too much. And that question has caused some of us in this room and a whole lot of people out there in our world to walk away from faith entirely. And I know that it's caused others of us to try and sit on the fence, to try to do Jesus' mission our own way. The problem is that just doesn't work at all. And we're in this series called Don't Die Dumb. And this morning I want to continue that by talking about some of the fine print of Christianity, some of the details and nuances of following Jesus, because I know they can be intimidating. If you've ever felt intimidated or scary or scared by all that it takes to follow Jesus, you're not alone. You got good company. His disciples felt that exact same way. We're going to look at their reaction to some of the stuff he said in a minute. But what I hope that we'll see this morning, because I think it will allow us to live fully alive while we're alive and die fulfilled rather than dying dumb, is that it's in some of that fine print scary stuff that life is found. Like, it's in chasing Jesus his way down his path, which sometimes requires suffering and always requires sacrifice. It's there that we find lives worth living and a mission worth giving ourselves to. And so I want to talk about that this morning by looking at something Jesus said in Mark chapter 8. If you have a Bible, you can crack it open there. If you don't have one, no worries, the words will be on the screen. If you need one or your kids need one, go ahead and grab one back at the table in the lobby that says Next Steps. They're free. They're our gift to you. But a little bit of background, and in Matthew 8, Jesus is walking around with his disciples. This kind of big crowd is following him, and they're in a really dark region where child sacrifices happen, and it's pagan. It's a place that's desperately crying out for the love and the hope of Jesus, and he throws this question out there at his disciples. He's like, hey, who do people say that I am? And just for what it's worth, real quick time out, I would not recommend any of you asking that question to your friends or family members or coworkers right now. I feel like if I asked that question, my wife would be like, Oh, I have been so excited to tell you who I say you are and who a lot of people are. Like, even worse, they might be like, no one says anything about you. They don't know you exist. So, like, just don't ask that question. But Jesus, at this point in time, is pretty sure that, like, there's some buzz around him. He's been healing people. He's been teaching for years. And so he throws it out there. He's like, hey, who do people say that I am? And the disciples are like, well, some people think you're John the Baptist. Like his head just got chopped off. They think you're like the reincarnation. It's a little bit weird. We've seen the two of you hanging out, your cousins, but like, there's people who say that. And some other people think that you're Elijah, like the reincarnation of a great prophet from the Old Testament. And Jesus goes, all right. What about you? Who do you guys say that I am? And Peter's like, oh, I got this one. Me. And Jesus is like, Peter, what do you say? And he's like, you're the Christ. And in this moment, Jesus says, you're right. I am the Christ. Keep it on the down low, though. It's not time to tell everybody yet. And I realize when I say that, some of you might be like, the Christ? I thought that was his last name. Like Joseph Christ and Mary Christ, they had a baby, they named Jesus Christ. That adds up. That makes a lot of sense. Not what the word Christ means, though. Christ is a Greek word that means anointed one. It actually matches up with the word from the Hebrew Old Testament, Mashiach or Messiah. So when Jesus confirms that he is the Messiah, that he is the Christ, what he's saying is, I am the one God promised in Genesis 3. Yes, I am the one that the entire Old Testament is pointed to over and over and over again, the one our desperately broken world has been hoping for from the beginning, the one who's going to set all things right and make things new. That's me. And so we got to understand in Mark 8, this is a monumental moment. His disciples' minds are blown. They've suspected it, right? Peter got the answer, right? They've thought it, but never before has Jesus outright and explicitly told them, that is exactly who I am. I'm everything you hoped that I was. And so they're fired up. They're like, let's go. And then Jesus began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests and the teachers of the law, and then he must be killed. And after 3 days, rise again. He spoke plainly about this, and Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. All right, so right after this moment, this is one of the best moments of any of his followers' lives, Jesus really kills the vibe. He's like, hey, all those visions of grandeur and glory and fame and wealth and power that you had, that's not how this is going to go down at all. That's not what I'm here for. And it's interesting to try and put ourselves in the disciples' shoes for a minute, because like they go from more excited than they've ever been, like, okay, yes, I don't even know what this is going to look like, but it's going to be so awesome, to hearing the word suffering, and you're like, oh. Well, that's why Peter took him aside. Good old Peter, he's always trying to help. He's like, oh no, things were going good, and now he's depressed. He really is the Christ, but I got to give him a little pep talk here. And so he goes over and he puts his arm around Jesus like, hey man, don't get negative on me now. Things are going good. You're famous. I'm kind of famous. John's not probably as famous as me, John, but like John's even famous. Like the people love us, man. And what are you talking about suffering? Remember that time it was like stormy and then you talked to the weather and it quit? Remember that? That was awesome. You can do that. They're not going to kill you. You're the Christ, man. So get back in there and say something happy to all the people before they walk away. And then Jesus looks at him and says, get behind me, Satan. You don't have the concerns of God in your mind. You have just the concerns of man. It's pretty intense when Peter's trying to help him out and encourage him a little and gets called Satan. I also think it's encouraging because I don't know about you, but sometimes I feel like I'm not a very good Christian. Like I'm not nailing it, you know, like, And then I remember that the first leader of the church once got called Satan by Jesus. I'm like, well, I'm not doing that bad, right? So however bad you're doing better than Peter probably was in that moment. But like Peter kind of exposed himself, right? He exposed his motives. Jesus looks at him and says, hey, you're not worried about what God's trying to do. You're worried about what you want to get out of it. You're not concerned with what happens to me. You're really concerned with what happens to you. And if that's your mindset, man, it's going to be problematic as things are about to get tough. Like, I didn't come for glory and wealth and blessing the way the world would talk about blessing. I came to set all things right and make all things new. I came to give my life so that people caught and dead in their sin could be forgiven and reconciled to the God who created them for himself. And that's going to cost something. What are you going to do when it comes time to pay the cost? Will you cut bait and run? Or will you follow in my footsteps? Because I want all of us to understand something this morning. It's that there's a cost to caring like Jesus. Always. See, Peter wanted the glory without the grief. He wanted the purpose without the pain. And I relate to that. I think so often when it comes to faith, we want to make a difference, but we don't want any discomfort. We want to change the world, but we don't have to change our calendars to make it happen. Like, honestly, just rip my chest open. I'm not proud of this, but this is who I am deep inside and who I'm trying not to be anymore. I want to care about other people, but sometimes what I want just a little bit more is to care about me. Like, I want to make an impact on the world and on the lives of the people around me, but sometimes what I want just a little bit more is to do it on my timeline in ways that don't inconvenience me at all. And maybe you guys can relate to that, but there's a cost to caring like Jesus cares. There's self-sacrifice that's involved in walking in his footsteps, and that's what the whole crowd is realizing right now. Like, they've had a really great time following him, but then he starts talking about getting arrested and getting crucified, and they're like, oh, like if I follow too closely behind the guy who's going to get arrested and crucified, I might get arrested and crucified too. And Jesus is like, yeah, you might. And the good news for you and me is we won't. Like, no matter what happens, no one's going to crucify us for following Jesus in 21st century America. But if we walk in his footsteps, if we're willing to care like he cares and love like he loves, there's going to be a cost to that, and often it's a significant cost. That's kind of what he says next. Like, he's talked about being arrested and killed, and then he takes it up a notch. He cranks it to 11, and he tells everybody, hey, if you're going to follow in my footsteps, like if you want to follow me, if you want to move toward meaning, if you want to live the life you were made for, like whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. That's a hard thing to wrap our minds around. I don't know if you're really good at denying yourself. I'm not. But we have some concept of what it looks like. We do it every day. Like when the waiter comes over and says, would anyone at the table like dessert? And everyone's like, no. It's not because you wouldn't like dessert. It's never because I don't want dessert. Some of you are like, well, I don't because I'm full. Fullness and dessert have never had any connection in my life. Like those are not related at all. I want dessert. I just say no because I recently finished a whole bunch of calories and I know it's not healthy for me in the long term. And so I'm able daily to say no to what I want now because of what's good for me in the long term. And that's what Jesus is getting at here. He's saying, hey, look, as you go through life, if you're going to follow me, if you're going to be my disciple, if you're going to do what I asked you to do, there are going to be moments where what I say is healthy for you in the long term does not match up at all with what you want to do now. And you got to decide who's in charge. You got to figure out which path you will follow. And you guys, all of us do. Because when it comes to walking in the way of Jesus, you can either be a consumer or you can be a follower, but you can't be both. They're mutually exclusive. You can cling to your comfort and your calendar and your control, or you can take up your cross and step into your calling. But those pathways are mutually exclusive. I'm going to say it again to make sure we got it. You can cling to your comfort and your calendar and your control, or you can take up your cross and step into your calling, but you cannot do both. It just doesn't work like that. There's no way to follow Jesus without self-denial. There's no way to be his disciple without taking up your cross.